Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices hosted by World Information Transfer and focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Today, our speaker is Ryan Haddon, who is a certified life coach, hypnotherapist, meditation teacher, and breathwork facilitator with over 18 years of experience helping others to thrive. She has worked with many private clients, corporate organizations, and U.S. government agencies, where she has shared mindfulness, coaching, hypnosis, and meditation to support the healing process of her clients. Over to you, Ryan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Durbach, for this introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's an honor and a privilege. Welcome to this moment in time that we have together. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in an international family with parents that traveled quite a bit around the world. So I grew up in Toronto, Paris, New York, Los Angeles, and I even ended up in India for several years, which was wonderful. So I had all these amazing cultures and languages that I was marinating in. And I was also able to learn to adapt very easily to wherever I was, like a cat to land on her feet, wherever she found herself. And it created this ability to morph and transform and learn a culture quickly and find my way around a city and pick up a language and go through my education and schooling. But in that, I also sort of lost a sense of self when you're growing up and trying to develop that. And I got really good at being whoever other people wanted me to be, but less knowing who I was as I started to mature and get older. And when that happens, sometimes we lose our way. We lose, what's my purpose? What am I here to do? And I found myself looking to other people to tell me that instead of really anchoring into my own voice inside. And so a lot of my own journey, personal journey, spiritual journey, healing journey was about really learning to listen to that voice within and learning to self-soothe. And so I met many incredible mentors. I used many modalities to do this. It led me to India, where I lived in a wonderful spiritual community where I learned meditation at the age of 17. I had a mother who was very open-minded, so I was able to live there and immerse myself in this beautiful culture and this beautiful traditions that have been around for thousands of years and this devotional aspect. And it was the first time that I was able to make a connection with myself and this power, whatever this is, something greater. And I didn't know that I was a seeker. I didn't know that I was looking for that. But this really became an important first transmission, if you will, of experiencing myself as something bigger than just someone bumping around on this planet and making that connection. And we all have that in different ways, whether it's through family, whether it's through religion, whether it's through the culture that we're in, whether it's through a relationship, whatever that is, for everyone, it's different. But for me, I found that in meditation. I found that in reading beautiful scriptures. I found that just some of the answers that I was seeking. And right before that, I had someone that very close to me who died suddenly. And it really plunged me into those questions. Why are we here? What are we doing here? It can't just be about this X, Y, and Z, earning money, getting a college degree. It didn't add up, if you will. It wasn't enough to feel like there's more to this. So again, those questions was the very beginning of pulling the thread of a tightly woven ball of yarn. And that seeking, that questioning is, I think, was a moment of grace for me. And so again, it led me to this spiritual seeking. When I wouldn't have called it that at the time at 17, I just felt really displaced, is what it felt like. And so I started reading those books. It led me to India. And from there, I had this awakening, if you will, this beautiful heart opening to spirituality, to a connection. And that in turn led me to following college, went to college, and then I started loving communications. This is where I earned my degree in journalism, which is getting curious about how did other people find their way? How did they come from different places in the world? And how did they in turn find their meaning? How did they find their purpose? And I think we have to mute ourselves on the call. Thank you. So then that led me to that in college. So I got this degree in communications in journalism and started working in various outfits like in the United States, Good Morning America and McNeil Lehrer on PBS, and really going after this idea of interviewing people and learning more about them. And at that time, I'm from the Gen X, a group of demographic, and we were really questioning, my generation was questioning, what are, again, collectively, what are we doing here? What is the purpose of, this generation? Because we weren't the baby boomers. It felt different. And I think every generation has a different way of looking at the generation that preceded them. And I think that's on purpose, because we should look and see and sift through, is this the right way? Is this how we want to grow collectively forward? Are these the values of our generation? So I think this questioning is always good, because we want to make the best world possible. And it's important to look and see what is working and what isn't. So if you're young and you're tuning into this questioning, you are meant to be asking these questions. And anyone who silences you and tells you that just follow in line, and we're not here to make more drones. We're here to create a different world. That is my understanding. Each generation has the opportunity to do that. And yes, we have to push against, there are forces in place that have been set in place, but there's power in our numbers. And it's important to remember that just the curiosity and the ability to second guess what came before is going to serve us very well. It served me well, and I see it working. I have children myself, and I see them questioning, they're in their 20s, and this is a very intense world to be inhabiting and to try to find anchor into and find your own purpose in, because everything is up for grabs. So it's a lot to look into. So what I want to talk about today is, I was talking about my 20s and the communications that I did and I studied in journalism. And then that led me more into therapies. It led me to different mentors, like I said, who showed up in hypnosis and coaching, and different mental health experts that I found for myself, because I was sifting through this childhood that I said had been, looked from the outside very privileged, but also that kind of movement, that kind of shaking things up all the time makes you question the ground that you're on and makes you feel unsafe, makes you feel like you have to reinvent yourself all the time. So I mentioned that. So in my 20s, this was the period of time where I found all these incredible mentors. And what all of the mentors kept teaching me again and again was that many of the answers I had inside myself, and that I had to learn tools to be able to self-soothe, to self-regulate. So that's really what I want to talk about. And that's the thrust of my own practice today. As Dr. Durbach mentioned, I am a life coach. I am a hypnotherapist, which means I work with the subconscious mind, which is the part that we all have that runs 95% of our lives underneath the surface of everything, which is fascinating to me, because we can have this idea that we want our life to go a certain way, but then the patterns beneath the surface within the subconscious mind that we picked up in childhood from the ages of 0 to 7 are what really is the operating system, much like a hard drive in a computer, that it's constantly just, if something in real time reminds us of an episode that happened from the ages of 0 to 7 or a traumatic event, we're constantly in fight and flight. And it becomes very burdensome, to be honest, because we're not in real time. We can't be in present time. We're constantly being pulled back to another time, and we can feel very out of control. And we can feel like, why did I just get triggered? Why did I just get activated? Which is what I like to call it. So I spend a good deal of time with my clients working on ways to self-soothe, working on ways to self-regulate. And it's worth noting that just in 2019, 12% of the world population had what we call mental disorders, from anxiety and depression. And that was just in 2019. It went up 28% in 2020. So that is a very large number. And most countries only dedicate 2% of healthcare budget towards mental health. So that leaves a lot of people out in the world just kind of navigating with these mental health issues. And there's only 1 in 200,000 psychiatrists that are available. So it gets very difficult. And people with mental health issues usually die 10 to 20 years earlier than other people. So these are the World Health Organization numbers. Whether they're 100% accurate or not, they feel like they might be. 1 in 7 adolescents struggle with mental health disorders, and we're talking about anxiety and depression. 1 in 8 or 9 adults, and so that ends up being like 13% of the population. So it's quite a large amount. And people who are exposed to poverty and violence, obviously those numbers go up. So we're looking at a lot of people walking around on the planet dealing with these very heavy ways of seeing the world, filtering how they experience the world, and so much compassion, because not everybody has access, like we said, to the types of mentors that I had at the time, or in developing countries, maybe even less. Those numbers are probably much less. So what I love to do in my practice, and I've done a lot of free hypnosis sessions. You can look at my website, ryanhaddon.com. You can go over there. I have free meditations. I have free hypnosis practices, which feels a lot like meditation. It's maybe a little bit deeper. And it's ways so that you can drop back into yourself. You can close out from the world that's going on around you, because we can't control all the time all the things that are happening around us, but we can come back to ourselves and learn how to work with our breath. See, we're breathing anyway. We might as well learn how to work our breath. Most of us breathe very shallow. And so it's a beautiful thing to learn how to work our own breath. That's why I'm a breathwork facilitator, to work our own breath, to be able to self-regulate. And when we take 3 deep breaths, let's do it together right now. Go ahead, and wherever you are, if you're driving, don't close your eyes. But if you're just sitting somewhere, go ahead and just put your hands in your lap. Or if you're walking, maybe just stand still for a moment. And let's just take 3 deep breaths. And you can do it with your eyes open and your eyes closed. I love it because you can do it at a business meeting. You can do it when you're on the subway. You can do it wherever, on a bus, wherever you are, when you're traveling, to just learn to work your own breath. Because when we work our breath, we're able to self-regulate. We're able to balance the left and right hemispheres of the brain. We're able to move out of fight and flight. So let's do that now. And by taking a deep breath, I mean take a deep breath through your nose, all the way down deep into the belly, and exhale out through the mouth. Good. Let's just do it one more time. 2 more times. Big deep out, exhale out, and 1 more deep breath in, down deep into the belly, and exhale out through the mouth. Good. And what that does is it slows down the thoughts. And we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, most of which are negative, because again, they're from the subconscious mind, which is just, replaying old ideas, old thoughts. But when we breathe, we're able to access the part of us that is more quiet, the part of us that pops out of all this programming, all of these negative thinking. So just 3 deep breaths can shift how we think and how we feel. And so I'm glad you have that. And this is what I do in my practice, is to teach people how to have this tools in your toolbox. And this is what makes us be able to access trauma, to be able to make decisions from a place, big life decisions. We all get choice points in our life, big decisions that happen, fork in the roads, to not be informed by our trauma or our past experiences, to be able to come from a place of quiet and presence and be able to know what the next right action is. And this becomes imperative when we're creating this new world around us. And so I would say, very simple practice. This is the light version, the 3 deep breaths. But also there's a 4, 7, 8 breath work, where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, and you exhale for 8. On my Instagram account, which is ryan.haddon, which is where I write a lot about these sorts of practices. This type of breath work I talk about a lot there, because you're really able, it's very well studied, very well researched. Many universities use it, and it's very able to, it helps you to be able to really access an even deeper place of calm than those 3 deep breaths in the moment. So it's a great practice to use in the morning when you wake up. I'm a meditation teacher, and a lot of times people don't want to meditate because it feels like one more thing they have to add to their long lists of duties. And people are honestly intimidated by meditation. So I like to break down a meditation practice. But again, the breath work seems very accessible to people. So again, the 4-7-8 is a really beautiful way, a well-researched way to be able to quiet the mind and drop back into presence in the body so that you move out of fight and flight. So if you find yourself really agitated, anxious, nervous, even angry, or going on this obsessive loop over a thought, like they did this thing to me, why they should do this different. We all have these these inner dialogues that are like obsessions. Using the 4-7-8 breath work is a really great way to be able to drop back into this center that we all have within us. So we're not leaning out, blaming other people. We move back into our own power. We have so much agency, but a lot of times we don't know how to access it. So the breath is one of those ways. I also love, there's a beautiful practice called tapping, emotional freedom technique, where you can tap on certain meridian points in the body. Meridian points are energy centers. And we tap on these points in the body, and we're able to, again, access this calm. And they have found that veterans with PTSD, it's the only thing that has helped them not have flashbacks. So if someone has trauma, if someone has, repeated flashbacks, which tends to happen if we've gone through very difficult, intense experiences, please look into emotional freedom technique. EFT, or tapping is the nickname for it. And there's an app online. They have a lot of free, I worked with them a lot. I've done a lot of summits with them, called the Tapping Solution. And you can download that app and be able, they'll walk you through how to do it around specific subjects. And I've had a high success rate with clients with that. So I recommend that. There's so many tools to be able to access our own sense of calm in a changing world. And there's no surprise that the world is 28% more stressed and anxious after the pandemic or during the pandemic, and we're still feeling the after effects of that. So give yourself a lot of grace. Slow everything down when you have a moment where you have to make a big decision. Come from a place of power, your inner power and strength, and find what that is. You are your own best ally. Make friends with yourself. Find a counselor or a therapist or someone that you can access that can to speak these things out that are inside us, so you don't have this storm going on. And then try using some of these very simple ways to self-soothe and calm your system. You deserve it. And I feel like it's really the way forward for us to deactivate our systems so that we can show up in the highest way with all our gifts, because each of us have tremendous gifts that we've been given, and we want to be able to access them so we can create a new experience on the planet, not just for ourselves, but for our children. And I really do believe that this is one of the most powerful ways through. So thank you so much for letting me share. Please come over to my Instagram page, and I love to have conversations there. If you have any other questions at all, I am here, and I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and informative presentation. I completely agree with you. The deep breathing and meditation is very helpful on whatever level of personal injury you're dealing with. You said that you were traveling around the world and taking other experts or seeing other experts to evaluate your own perspective and your own way of how you wanted to treat people. So do you recall anybody very specific. In India, we know because basically our secretary of the board is from India.
Oh.
So I'm a little bit aware of that. But in other parts of the world, have you seen any extraordinary approaches or different approaches, specifically under in impoverished countries like in Africa or in Southeast Asia?
I know I don't. My mother is has an organization in Nanyuki in Kenya, and she has a center of worth there. And I know that they do some mindfulness. I know that there are many people are starting to understand that this is the way through. I mean, it's a big umbrella, this concept of mindfulness and wellness, and it means different things to different people. But I think these sorts of centers are popping up. My mother's been doing this for, I think, a few decades with them. But I think going to these places and asking for it. We love a meditation class. We would love a breathwork class. We would love a class on learning how to self-regulate. Is probably going to be a great way to find your tribe, because everyone's looking for the same thing. But I think to be able to feel good, to be able to let go of the past, to be able to feel community, that are also trying to do the same thing. They're also trying to create something new and better and have opportunities. So I think going to centers and wellness spaces and asking for free, hypnosis groups and things like that would be very, very powerful. Of course, I've come across that because I'm in this part of the world, and it's much more pervasive. But I think if the demand is there, I think by asking for it, then people want to serve these centers that are here for, even outreach programs, to let them know we would love to have a meditation group, or go online. I know there's lots and lots of online free, like I said, I offer that as well, groups of people that offer free experiences just to try it out, because it might not work for you. This type of meditation, or many types of meditation. That's the thing I learned when I went to meditation school, and we're not all suited for each kind. So find your kind and be patient and try different kinds. There's so much out there, and especially, and we're also connected globally through the internet, that I think that you can find different opportunities to explore your own relationship with yourself and your past and your present. Hope that
Thank you very much. And we will now turn over to our moderator, Susie Halleck. Over to you, Susie.
Thank you, Dr. Durbach, and thanks so much, Ryan, for a very interesting presentation and very relevant. As you mentioned, my mental health is such a big issue that isn't currently invested in to the degree at which it needs to be. So looking forward to the Q&A here. The first question is, do you see mindfulness as something connected to religion and spirituality? How do you see these worlds connect or differ?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think religion isn't for everyone, and spirituality isn't for everyone. Wherever mindfulness is about really coming into a peaceful state, it's about cultivating what is, where we are. This is another thing that sometimes the spirituality gets a bad rap, because it looks like we're bypassing what's true. So we can hold many things at once. We can be angry and also reach for mindfulness. So we're not saying, I'm so peaceful, everything's so great. We're just saying, I am here. And I'm showing up with, my disappointment, my fear, my worry, my anxiety, my anger, all of the emotions. And I'm also working a practice. And so if someone finds mindfulness in going and praying and meditating with rosary beads, or reading their sacred texts, or sitting in a community listening to a sermon that feels mindful to them, then that's beautiful, wherever you can find it. I also find other people that leave religion that are feel like they're not finding themselves in this place. So they add on with spirituality, and it enhances their religion. I don't think they're exclusive one to the other. I think what's important is to take an overview of your life and look at is this part of me? Can I do more? Because I'm, like I said before, I have agency. I'm creating my life and my relationship to myself and the world around me in many ways. Yes, we all have circumstances that are out of our control. I'll say that again. And terrible things do happen around us. But again, how am I going to show up as best I can? And how can I advocate for myself within this construct? Because we all have this God-given ability to transmute, to transcend, to be able to alchemize and integrate all of our experiences. And I do speak from someone who has, I didn't touch on that, but who has experienced many different things, from trauma to abuse to, there's many, to assault, many different things. And that's why Dr. Durbach and I were speaking at the beginning of this. I feel like any good therapist, life coach, counselor has gone through their own ability to heal and be able to walk through the hot coals, the fire of life, because life gets lifey. Life, no matter how spiritual you are, no matter how religious you are, doesn't always put us around a bubble of safety. It doesn't always preclude us from the activities on this planet. And what we can do is, go through these experiences, and then what happens on the other side? Does it extinguish our light? Or can we use this as something that can enhance our light and help us actually help others to be able to show up in service? And that has been my life's journey. The negative experiences, negative, I say them like this because they've also been gifts to me, and that's how I see it. Even the ones that the aggressors, I'm able now to see the symphony of how that created and shaped me into a person that stands, that's able to help others and serve others. And that is my life's path. Each person has their own, and I'm just deeply grateful for that. That said, I have not been able to do that on my own. I needed to find different people at varying times, and they did show up for me. When I asked for it, I found them. And I do feel like there's an amount of grace that can show up in our life when we ask deeply and we feel ready to be able to let go of the story of a victim, or we're let go of the story of being at the mercy of different events, which there's a moment where that is true. And then there's a moment, like I said, where we can create a shift in our perception of them, and it's deeply empowering. And that is my truth, and I've seen it happen again and again in my practice, and through the global clients that I serve. I've seen them be able to shift terrible events and have them make sense, not only make sense for them, but be a part of how they show up on the planet, in their purpose, in their work as mothers, as fathers, as also citizens. So it is possible. And that is, we each have to find what are those ways that we're able to do it. And we can do it, some of it on our own, and some of it, we look to people who've gone before us, who've been able to do it. And that becomes really important, to find people that are integrated, to not turn our power over to them, but to understand that they are lighthouses that help us reflect back our own greatness. And if you find someone who tells you that they are the ones that are the savior, or they're the ones that can do it for us, that I would say run, that you are deeply empowered to be able to transmute your own pain and your own understanding of things, but we need helpers along the way. So it's my honor to be that, and to try to do that as best I can.
Do you mind sharing what drew you to this field of work, and anything you can share about your journey?
I think I just answered that question, but I'll answer it again. Just that I had to transmute many negative experiences that had happened in all the traveling that I had done, encountering many situations that were unfavorable, and that really shaped my understanding of the world. And spirituality was a big part of the healing, but it wasn't enough. And I needed to find other counselors and therapists and hypnosis which again, I tell you, I'm very deeply enamored by as a modality, because it works with the deepest part of ourselves beyond the conscious mind, in the part of us that runs 95% of things. So there's an incredible book that I recommend. So I'm blanking on it right now. I can't believe it. It's written by Dr. Joseph Murphy, about the power of the subconscious mind. And it's a very good book. That was sort of my initiation into hypnosis, was just reading that book and understanding how we shape our thoughts by how we think repetitively. And when we think there's not enough, I'm never going to find my way, we say these things over and over again to ourselves. They become what we create and what we cast out into the world. So I think the most thing is starting to notice what is the underlying conversation that you're having with yourself on an ongoing basis. What are these thoughts that are recurring when you have a setback, when you're disappointed, when something doesn't go your way? What is the first thing that comes to mind that you say with repetition? Noticing that and noticing the power of your own thoughts. I would recommend that book to anyone who's listening, who is interested in working with their own subconscious mind.
How does mindfulness help you in your daily work?
Again, mindfulness is such a broad term, but I think we're a very reactive world. I think that the world is a matrix, if you will, that counts on our reactivity through the news, through big events. It's a very grabby time to be on the planet. It's constantly seeking our attention, and we're being pulled in different directions, and it's mostly negative. It's mostly fear-based. It's mostly lack consciousness. And there's not enough. You will not have enough. There isn't enough. You'll never be enough. You are not enough is basically it. And the entire industry of commercialism is based on your not enoughness. So I would say mindfulness becomes imperative, because otherwise you're always being pulled out of yourself, saying you need to earn more, you need to be more, you need to smell better, you need to look better. And so you're constantly being pulled out of your own self-love. And I know that's a new agey term, but it's essentially that. And really, when you just say, it's enough of telling me I'm not enough. And by doing that, that's why we practice mindfulness, so we can return to our own self. And within that through our breath, through meditation, through listening to our thoughts, through reprogramming our thoughts, by journaling, getting to know what we're thinking. I think a lot of times when I work with global leaders, they go on productivity bend from morning till night, and they don't know what they were thinking during the day, because it's about the value is on the productivity. What is the output? How much are you delivering? The value is on what the doing is. And mindfulness, I do believe this, and I don't know if anyone else would agree with me, but it becomes more about the being. So we can still be productive, but can we be more present? Can we show up with our full selves instead of just the part of our mind that's getting all the tasks done in a day? You don't even have to be a global leader, just even as a mother. It's a busy life at home, getting all the list of the to-do things done before the kids get home. Or if you're homeschooling, it's getting all those things. So it's not changing what we're doing. It's just doing it in a different way. And that's why I love breathwork, because we're already breathing. It's just doing it with more awareness and things like that. And same with meditating. We're already meditating. We're meditating on many things all day long. But how can we shift our focus on simple ways to come back to ourselves and to pull our attention away from the world that is telling us we're not enough, or that we have to be more and do more, and really propagating a lot of fear consciousness. And we cannot show up in our best selves. We cannot deliver the gifts that we each have within us if we are coming from a place of being on a treadmill, on a rat race of not enough, and being stressed, depressed, not sleeping well. All these things affect how we eat, when we eat, how we show up in our relationships. Our life changes when we start to put a little more attention on our breathing, on our presence. So if you're taking a walk, start to quiet your mind and work on some simple breath, breathing in and out, or the 4-7-8. Notice your feet touching the ground, feel the breath, feel the wind in your hair. Notice the smell. So just bringing yourself back into your body instead of the spinning of your mind, the 60 to 80,000 thoughts that I mentioned, and notice everything around you. That's mindfulness. Again, you can practice it in so many different ways, but I love when we just keep it simple. Simple is best. And it's really, we'll be able to show up and love more. We'll be able to receive more love. We'll be able to notice other people around us doing better things and complimenting them on them. If you want your life to change, start noticing the good that's happening around you. If you have a toddler that's constantly tantruming, which I have had, I have 4 children, start noticing, oh, I love how you picked that up off the floor. Or to your husband, I love how you took the trash out. Thank you so much. Start growing your life out. That's mindfulness, of being grateful for the little things. It doesn't have to be these big demonstrations. It can be small ways that we can acknowledge other people's good. And in so doing, then they reflect that good back to you. And you feel that your life, there's more good happening. Instead of amplifying the not enoughness, we start amplifying the good. This is a great practice of mindfulness.
How do you recommend, some audience members are curious, like, how do they show up in professions that require communication, stimulation, being focused, without tiring themselves out? Are there any like quick tips that you recommend or daily practices?
I think that I was just at a global conference in New York City, and I taught the same thing. You can be in a meeting and no one needs to know, or you can have, that same person who asks the same dumb questions, and you'd feel like you're losing your patience and your blood pressure is going up, and you can be looking at them and just practice that breath work. Just let the thoughts go and just come back to the breath, creating a mindfulness practice in the morning, and find yours. Don't find mine, find the one that works for you. And sometimes we outgrow a certain practice that we've been doing. If you're doing a certain type of yoga, or you're doing, do something else, mix it up. We're creatures of habit. Try different things. So much is available to us. So I would say find ways to bring them to work. When you have lunch, just take a few minutes on your lunch break to go outside and take a walk instead of going on your Instagram. I was telling you guys to come to my Instagram, but find your little ways that you can just take 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It really will get you very far. I love recommending to people to put on their phones reminders, because you will go into autopilot. That's what we do. And this world validates our productivity. So what I would say is you're going to have to push against an old way of being. So put in your phone little reminders. We always have our phone with us. Put several reminders throughout your day. Breathe. Feel, stop everything and just give thanks for your health. Or just little reminders throughout your day to pause and just come back to yourself. And you can do it, if on the hour feels like too much, then do it every 3 hours. And have those little reminders go off on your phone. And if someone asks you what that is, and you say, I'm just going to do a little breath, say, do it with me, and like include people in it. Do it with your children. This is the way, is teaching our children how to practice this mindfulness, how to practice breath work, how to journal what they're feeling, to give value to our emotions, not to be ruled by them, but to give them appropriate places where they can be expressed, becomes, emotional intelligence for the generation that comes up behind us.
Thank you, very helpful. What advice can you give to teenagers or students who are trying to explore themselves and understand what their purpose is, or their chosen field of work? Is this kind of like related to these practices?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what a beautiful question. Everyone's asking such great questions. It absolutely, it's not cool to meditate. It's not, I have teenagers and they're like something mom does. So they're like kind of resistant to it. But I think if it's something that you feel called to do, I think that it's here for you, because not everybody feels the desire to connect. But like I said before, when we can meditate or practice a breath work, or journaling is a good mindfulness practice of like, what's going on inside? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And then write what you're good at. What do you love to do? Everyone thinks that their purpose is like over there and they have to figure it out. One day I'll figure out my purpose. But what I always go back to when I have clients that come to me and they're reinventing themselves and they've had a hugely, successful careers, and they're like, I'm done with this. I want to start over and do something else. I always say to them, there are breadcrumbs to purpose. What do you love? What are your gifts? What are you good at? Make a list of them. Make a list of what you love to do as a kid. Is it, and you're going to find little clues. And then it's great to find your school counselor and talk to them about these things, instead of a lot of times other adults will project onto us what they think what should be done, or there's expectations around us of who people think we should be or what our family did before. And, absolutely, we have to honor, our elders, and we honor, their dreams for us. Great. But again, at the end of the day, this is your one life, and we get to choose how we want to lead it. And I would say this should be a mandatory course in high school: is what are you good at? What do you love? And what are your interests in these years? And then follow the thread of this, and don't be afraid to make the wrong choice, because you'll ultimately land where you need to go. It's just start. Sometimes we can get in our heads about, it has to be perfect, or I have to pick the perfect thing, or it has to be, just start and you'll know. And then you'll pivot left. Be flexible. Let yourself be guided and directed by this inner guide inside you. And that's why mindfulness becomes so powerful, because we start to listen to this powerful voice that we each have inside us. I like to think of it as our soul, our higher self. That's not the ego. That's not the subconscious mind with its programs. The part of us that knows. So we want to connect to that part of us, and really we can connect to that mostly in stillness, mostly by practicing quieting all the other voices and all the other outside projections of the world, because the world will have us be a Kardashian. The world will have us be, some illustrious something or other, but we each have our purpose, and it doesn't matter if it's big, famous, small. It's just find your own and love it and hold it as a treasure, and just keep following the thread. And remember, it can change, and purpose can change, and we can be flexible and pivot.
Thank you. I think really tangible things that people can take away from your advice. And the next question from the audience is, how can mental practices help individuals become more aware of their impact on the environment and make more sustainable choices? I think about just a simple example when, I'm not so consumed in a conversation or the day-to-day, I'll think, okay, let me rinse off this material and throw it in the recycle bin rather than just tossing it in the trash. Or thinking about how much food I'm going to consume rather than watching TV and just consuming just to consume. It's you think about, what do you really need to nourish yourself? Are there other ways that you kind of think about it?
I love that you mentioned that, Susie, because I do think it's just slowing down. Mindfulness can just be that, of just slowing down and watching where we have these impulses to react, and that's another thing that mindfulness gives us. We're able to respond instead of react. And so then we show up better in relationships. Same, our relationship to food. When we eat consciously, when we bless our food, when we give thanks for it, whether you're spiritual, religious, whatever that is, I think we can all agree that we can have gratitude that we get to nourish ourselves in this way. So we slow it down and we plan our days of how we're going to nourish, instead of waiting till the last minute we're starving and we grab something that's not healthy, or we grab a fast food, or I find every now and then, but this creates a life, and what we feed ourselves visually, emotionally, and just physically becomes who we are. So I think that mindfulness translates to our relationship with everything outside of us, and what's included inside of us, and also what's outside of us. So I hope that answers that question. But I think it's definitely, mindfulness just shows up in many ways, and it is just slowing everything down and getting curious. This is my favorite thing to keep talking about, is I wonder why I did that, instead of no, why did this happen? I wonder what was going on for me in that moment. Curiosity is the best first line.
Can you hear me okay? I think it froze.
Oh.
Okay. I think I'm back.
The curiosity is the best first line of defense. I wonder what was going on for me. I wonder what I was thinking when I ate that tub of ice cream. I wonder what was going on when, I responded like in the heat of a moment with that person when they said that didn't make sense. And just getting curious and not shaming, getting curious about our responses to things or our reactions to things most often. And then kind of walking it through and journaling about it is a big thing. I'm going to keep saying that because this is free. You can, when you start to know yourself a little bit and get curious about yourself, you can start to unlock things like, oh, this situation reminds me. What does this remind me of? It reminds me of that time where I got shut down. It reminds me of that time where I got silenced. It reminds me of that time where I was shamed publicly. So I, react to it from if someone said that, or, and it was a big response. And then I had to go and apologize to them. So I think it's getting curious and starting to connect the dots for yourself, I think is a really great way to practice mindfulness and take it one step further in understanding yourself and making progress on the path. And when you start seeing yourself, understand yourself and shift and change, it becomes really exciting. So I think growth is exciting. I think understanding ourselves is exciting because we start to have that feeling of being able to advocate and have that agency that I keep speaking about, that, wow, I can shift, I can change. I am not set in my ways. That might be one of the most crazy things that people have ever said, that people are set in their ways. I completely think that is the biggest load of hooey. I have seen thousands of people shift and change, and it's always possible. It doesn't matter where you are in your life. It doesn't matter what's happened to you. It doesn't matter what you've gone through. We all have the ability to heal and to change. And we are a spark of stardust. And this spark of this energy all around us. You can see it in nature. You can see it in the stars. We are, oh, dare I say on this call, we are divine sparks. And however you see that, of love, of power, of creativity, it can be however you define it, but that is your essence. And everything else is just personality, programming, culture, all these other things. But you are much bigger than that. So remember that.
I recently read somewhere that similar to how like physical flexibility could be an indication of physical well-being, that mental flexibility is an indication of mental wellness and health, and it kind of connects to what you just mentioned. What are your thoughts on this?
I think absolutely flexibility to be able to pivot, but I also, because I work with so many people who are codependent and recovering from people pleasing and codependence, I would say if you're over flexible and you're not speaking your truth and you're not setting boundaries and you're not saying no to things you don't want to do consistently, then flexibility is not your thing. Then it would be to be not as flexible. So I think they go hand in hand. It's just important. We're saying one thing, it's not, these aren't absolutes. I think it's really feeling into how you show up consistently. And are you intractable? Are you intransigent? Then yes, flexibility would be the order of the day. But if you're someone who's overly flexible and not being able to find your voice and amplifying your voice, which is very much needed at this time, then work on saying no. Work on holding on to your truth and amplifying that instead.
Makes a lot of sense. Do you have any basic advice for anyone on the line who's kind of dealing with social anxiety?
So much compassion, because that is difficult, and you have, a running dialogue going on under the surface of whatever is happening in real time with that anxiety. I would say set yourself up for big wins. If you have to go and be in public places or go to public events, shorten the time. Find certain specific things topics that you can speak about, like coach yourself before you go in, bookend your time, call a friend before and call a friend after. Like there's lots of different tips and tools to do that. And one of the biggest ways, as someone who, if you can imagine, I was someone who suffered from that greatly in my teenage years, just paralyzing anxiety. And to tell you, my self-esteem wasn't great. So this is in real time. You can see that's just not an issue today, but I definitely had that. It was crippling. I remember one specific time I had all friends eating at a restaurant, and I went and sat outside and was reading a book on the curb, and I had a friend come out, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I just can't sit for dinner." And they were like, "Oh my God." So that's where I came from and where I am today. So I would say these are all the tips that I would use. And also curiosity. I talked about curiosity about our own inner workings, but curiosity at a dinner party or curiosity at a cocktail party or wherever it is that you have to go, just take the focus off of you and put it on and put the spotlight on someone else and ask them questions about them. Why are you here tonight? What are you excited about? What's something wonderful that happened to you? Like, find your list of questions, and these you can Google them, you can find them. There's really great questions to learn about other people. And then you find yourself getting out of your own shell and getting out of your own like amplification of dis-ease in that moment, and you're really putting the spotlight on them, and then you become a really great conversationalist. And that's actually how I turned the tides. And excusing yourself to the bathroom, taking deep breaths when you go, breathing, using your mindfulness before you go into an event, talking to yourself and saying, "You got this, you can do," like giving yourself these affirmations before, and then shortening the time. Just go for 10 minutes. Start out that way and then walk out feeling great. Don't wait till you're standing in the corner by yourself, so you feel like you failed again, find those ways to really set yourself up for success. You deserve that, because we can do it in small, fast doses, and then you'll get better at like extending those times. Yeah.
Really helpful. Thank you. We have many audience members who submitted questions around, like, they've always been interested in meditating. And as you mentioned earlier, like it's really hard for people to kind of sit down and meditate for the first time. So any, quick tips or maybe specific meditations that you think are most useful? I know you mentioned the breath work, like the 4 seconds, 7, 8, but outside of that, just to sit and meditate, any advice?
Again, my friends, set yourself up for success. Set your timer for 2 minutes. That's all you have to do. And this is one of the biggest things that I learned in meditation. You cannot stop the thoughts. Mind blown, I've set you free. You're not going to be able to quiet the mind, because the mind is off gassing. It has the 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So it's just it's just thinking that I got to do the laundry, I got to think. So when you make peace with that, what happens is then we start saying, "I'm a bad meditator. I can't quiet the mind. This is, So give yourself that break and just say, the mind is off gassing. All I'm going to do is just do my breath, or I'm going to listen. That's why I said there's a lot of different things. You can listen to a guided meditation. I have one called Anapana meditation, which I love. It's like a Vipassana type of meditation. I love it because it's very simple. It's for my meditators that say they hate meditation, because what happens is I just keep talking the whole time. So they're just listening to me. So that's a good one. You can find, it's probably in my bio on my Instagram. So if you're not on Instagram, it might be in my website, but that's a really good one, Anapana meditation. And then give yourself that break, set your timer for a short success. And also to understand that like meditation can be a walking meditation. So maybe you are already a meditator, but you're thinking that you're someone that's sitting there with a mantra in the lotus position. So I want you to just let all that go. That is one type. It's not the only kind. Tai Chi is considered a meditation. It's a moving meditation. So isn't that beautiful that maybe you're already doing that? Kundalini yoga is another type of meditation where you use breath, mantra, and mudras at the same time. So find yours, try different ones, give yourself a break with the mind and trying to quiet the mind, because you're not going to be able to. What will happen is the mind will just keep doing its thing. You're going to allow it to do its thing, but then you're going to focus on something else, be it mantra, breath, sound, sensations in the body is a really great one. Like, what am I smelling? Ziva meditation is a nice one to do too, because she does a lot of those types. So there's so much out there. And stop saying you're not a meditator. This is a contract that you're making with yourself, because the ego doesn't actually want you to meditate. It wants to be in charge, and it creates a lot of resistance to sitting down and doing it. So just understand that when you're telling yourself you're not a meditator, your ego is like, whoop, whoop, we're winning this thing. And you are not your ego. It is just, it's a tool. It's a very important part of who we are, but we don't want it to run point. We don't want it to run point in our relationships, and we don't want it to run point in our meditation practice. So again, just let the mind off gas and then find that other thing that you're going to focus on instead. And let's broaden this term of meditation. And it's not about quieting the mind. It's not about silencing the mind, although that becomes an offshoot. It does end up sometimes happening, and it's great when it happens, but I think we tend to judge, oh, this was a good meditation, this was a bad one. Can we just be neutral and just say, I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes and work up to that. And whatever happens in that time is none of my business. I am sitting down with this technique or with this, whatever it is that you're choosing to do. And whatever happens is not in my purview, because I can't control this mechanism of my body, but I can focus on this other thing instead in this period of time. And everyone can do that.
Are there some recent developments or techniques in the field of life coaching and hypnotherapy that you find exciting, as we increasingly have innovations that make us more distracted and less mindful? Are there kind of exciting innovations that you think counter that?
I think there's a lot of apps that are coming out now where you can just have it on your phone and just grab your mindfulness, wherever you are. I think that seems like a good use of technology to me. And then once you become proficient, you might have your own practices. So I would say that's really great. And, hypnosis is something people have a lot of preconceived ideas about what that is. They're imagining that there's like a ticking, a clock that's going back and forth. And really what we're doing is we're working at the deepest part of ourselves. We have many different brainwave activity states. I mean, this is science, where they're when it's very fast and rapid, it's beta, and it's a lot about output. Right below that's alpha. So it starts to slow down a little bit. And that's where we start to create space between the thoughts. And that's where meditation happens. And then below that is theta. And theta is a very magic time where we can reprogram our subconscious mind. So that's what's happening when we're in theta state, when we go into hypnosis. And hypnosis is just a way, like if you listen to binaural beats, you can download apps for that. There's so many great resources, and to be able to access this lower brainwave state where we can look at what we really actually want for our life and reprogram, more abundance, more love, more letting go of old patterns and obsessions and habits and addictions. I find a lot of people come to me with like fear of the water, with trying to quit smoking, not being able to show up consistently in relationships because they have a fear of abandonment or they've had extreme trauma. So this is where I see a lot of success happening as we drop into this theta state. And, just so you all know, when we're ages 0 to 7, we're always in theta. And after 7 years old, we pop out and move through these other brainwave states. So it's a very fertile time, the theta state, to be able to absorb what's going on around us, for better or for worse. And so when we do it intentionally in hypnosis, it shortens the distance for healing. It shortens the distance between who we are and who we see ourselves as and who we want to be, so we can close that gap. It's very, very exciting. So I love hypnosis, and there's lots of different types of hypnosis, again, just like meditation. So find your person if you're interested in it, learn some reprogramming techniques. And there's also, like I said, technology. There's some apps out there that have hypnotic inductions using sound. Another thing, sound is so powerful. Doing a sound bath, you get into these states doing that. So very exciting.
Thank you for sharing. We have a few questions from students who are dialed in from Ukraine. They're currently dealing with the conflict and just living through stress, anxiety, feelings of helplessness during the war. So they have questions around like just any tips or messages around reducing those feelings during external situations that they don't have control over.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a very difficult place to find oneself in. And again, so much compassion. And thank you for your question. I think we make a small start. We try to find, to create a practice, like we said, just small breath work to try to come back to you, because if it's not safe around you, how can you make your internal environment safe as best you can? And so creating these mindfulness techniques becomes almost imperative versus someone else who's, living their best life and they just want their quality of life to improve. Under duress like this, it really becomes so important. And maybe start a group together to help each other to talk about what's going on, to be able to practice different types of mindfulness, to be able to do these practices together is beautiful. And I would say becomes vitally important to be able to maintain your own equilibrium when the tectonic plates underneath you have shifted and are continuing to shift. There's no stability. So it becomes important to find that inner stability. And I know it's a challenge, but I also know that you're up for it and you can do it, because the human spirit is unbelievable. And I'm in awe of it constantly. And I have tremendous respect for the soul. Find your community. People do better when they're not isolated, and mental health oftentimes has us isolate. It becomes a singular voice that's like, you're better alone. You can do this. That is like, if you start catching yourself isolating, trying to move away from people, we do better as groups. People in recovery with addictions get better statistically in groups together. It's just, we are meant to be together and we're tribal. And so find your people who are like you, looking to be able to practice mindfulness. Find your community, find your team, even if it's, 2 or more creates community. Just start there, try some practices together, do it with regularity, hold each other up, listen to each other's heartbreak, hold space for each other, reflect back each other's greatness, try new techniques. Again, I'll mention emotional freedom technique has worked incredibly for veterans with PTSD when nothing else worked. There is an app, I mentioned it at the beginning in case anyone didn't hear, called the Tapping Solution app, and they do have free programs that you can run on different things, from anxiety to depression to trauma, that you can participate in and try this tapping technique, which is beautiful because it's very tactile and you're repeating while you're touching these points on the body. It helps the body to process what's going on and what's true for you while you tap on and speak these truths out loud. So it's a great one for people who don't like to meditate in silence, because you're actually touching these points and you feel better and you can measure it. It's measurable of how you feel before and how you feel after. And it just takes a few minutes. So I would say that would be a really great one, because it's worked for, people who have actually, like you, have seen terrible things and who have these pictures that keep downloading constantly, whether they like it or not. And you want to interrupt this pattern, this loop, as best you can. So I would say avail yourself to as much that's out there. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And the last few questions we received are just people expressing interest in kind of your work with corporate and individual clients, like maybe some challenges they're typically facing, how you've helped them resolve them, and what you look to in the future to help promote global sustainability through mindfulness. So any closing examples and remarks that you can share?
Yeah, I think it would be important to know that it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what your quality of life is. It doesn't matter what you're going through, what your demographic. I think there's a human condition, and people are constantly outsourcing their power outside of themselves. And I see this in my practice, people who have the highest level of fame or celebrity, and they feel like a shell of a person. And so what we work on is to try to have them reconnect to who they are, what they want. And the quickest way to do that is through these mindfulness practices. So they're not just like a fluffy thing that's like icing on the cake. It becomes the way through figuring out, renegotiating purpose, figuring out how they can be in deeper partnership with their loved ones, their family, and the world that they live in. And this whole world is recalibrating. and reorganizing itself. We have a lot of different things happening with AI and technologies, and what cannot be duplicated is our humanity. We are souls having a human experience, and these are my beliefs. Have your own, find your own way, but this is so our humanity becomes where we can create connections with each other, and our humanity is what binds us together as a species. And our compassion, our ability to love, our ability to transmute trauma, our ability to be true to ourselves and to amplify our voices becomes what makes us unique. And I would say, keep amplifying your humanity, keep connecting with other people, sharing your truth, speaking up, and really being your most authentic self. And if you don't know what that means, if that sounds like something on a t-shirt or on a bumper sticker, mindfulness will be the way that will help you figure out how you peel away all the programming, all the projections of the world, of this matrix onto you from your community, from the media, from the advertising and the Hollywood, from all these different places of what they define what love looks like, what success looks like, and it does not. You define that. So get true with your values, what matters to you, what you want to, who you want to be as a human being in this world, how you want to show up. That's the only thing we have control over, is how we show up. And it's not even how it's received. Because other times, we write scripts for other people. When I say this, you do this. If you don't do this, I'm mad at you. Like, these are buttons that get pressed. Let go. Let everyone be who they are, and you show up as your truest self as best you can. Mindfulness practices will help you peel away the noise and the programs and figure out what you want, what matters to you, how you want to show up in love, in partnership, as a citizen, sustainably. And also, what happens next? We are at a jumping off point. There is talk about transhumanism, all these different things. And remember that you are a soul and there's a grand plan. That's what I would say for you. And find your gifts and amplify them.
Thank you so much. It's such an inspirational conversation, but with also tactical advice that people on the line can take away and start today. So thank you so much for speaking with us, and I'll turn back to Dr. Durbach to close out.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Susie. I'm so sorry, Susie,
for moderating. And basically, Ryan, it reminded me, I used to teach medical students how to meditate. Mm-hmm. And basically, I started by telling them to go into the ocean or into a cave, depending whether they were claustrophobic or not. And then to breathe deeply, and then to think of what bothers them the most. Mm-hmm. And actually, that works very, very nicely for a long time.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and informative presentation. I'm sure that many of our audience are going to find it very valuable. And so we will wish you continued success and have a very good Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr. Durbach. Bye, Susie. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.